The notification sound cut through the silence like a blade. 3 a.m., and Lena's phone was buzzing again. I watched my wife's face illuminate in the blue glow as she smiled at whatever message had just arrived. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen before she placed it face down on the nightstand, as had become her habit. "Work emergency?" I asked, my voice thick with sleep and suspicion. "Just Sebastian confirming tomorrow's project meeting," she whispered, already turning away from me. Sebastian. The name that had been creeping into our conversations for the past month like a virus spreading through our marriage. Always, Sebastian says this, or Sebastian thinks that, or Sebastian and I need to work late again. I'm Evan Harper, and I used to think I knew my wife. The morning routine had changed, and I noticed everything. Lena used to leave her phone charging on the kitchen counter while she made coffee. Now it stayed glued to her hand, screen locked faster than a bank vault whenever I entered the room. She'd developed this muscle memory reflex, thumb hitting the power button the instant she heard my footsteps. "Morning, beautiful," I said, kissing her cheek as she scrolled through what looked like a work email. The screen went black immediately. "Morning," she replied without looking up, then powered it back on once I'd moved to the coffee maker. I'm a data broker specializing in audio and signal analysis. I notice patterns. I track anomalies. And my wife had become the biggest anomaly in my life. "So, this Sebastian guy," I said, pouring my coffee. "He's the new consultant on the Morrison project?" "Mm-hmm." She was texting again, a slight smile playing at her lips. "Funny, I thought Morrison was a solo assignment. Didn't you specifically ask for it because you wanted to prove you could handle a major client independently?" Her typing stopped. "Plans change, Evan. The client requested additional support?" "Right." I leaned against the counter, studying her. "And this additional support requires daily lunch meetings? We need to coordinate our approach." The defensive edge in her voice was new too. "It's called collaboration." "Is that what we're calling it?" She finally looked at me, her green eyes flashing with irritation. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just seems like a lot of collaboration for a project that was originally designed for one person." Lena stood abruptly, grabbing her purse and phone. "I don't have time for your paranoia this morning. Some of us have actual work to do." She left without her usual goodbye kiss, the front door slamming behind her with enough force to rattle the windows. I stood in our kitchen, surrounded by the smart home technology I'd installed over the years. Motion sensors, security cameras, automated lighting systems, all designed to make our lives easier, to keep us connected and secure. But I was starting to realize that all the technology in the world couldn't protect you from the person sleeping next to you. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Frankie. "Coffee? You sound like you need it." I'd apparently been more transparent about my suspicions than I'd thought. 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Frankie at our usual spot, a small cafe downtown that served coffee strong enough to wake the dead. Frankie Martinez had been my friend since college, a fellow tech geek who now ran his own cybersecurity firm. If anyone would understand my growing paranoia, it would be him. "Yes, so let me get this straight," Frankie said after I'd laid out my concerns. "Lena's got a new work buddy, she's being secretive with her phone, and you're convinced something's up." "It's not just the phone thing, it's everything. The way she lights up when she gets messages, the lunch meetings that started happening every single day, the fact that she's suddenly working late 3 nights a week when she used to be home by 6 religiously." Frankie stirred his coffee thoughtfully. "Have you tried talking to her about it?" "This morning. She accused me of being paranoid." "Maybe you are." I gave him a look. Okay. He raised his hands defensively. "But think about this logically. You're a data analyst. What would you tell a client who came to you with suspicions but no hard evidence?" "I'd tell them to gather more data." "Exactly." Frankie leaned forward. "So gather data. But be smart about it, and be prepared for what you might find." That afternoon, I did what I do best. I analyzed patterns. Lena's daily routine had shifted dramatically over the past month. She used to pack lunch 3 days a week, eating at her desk while working through projects. Now she left the office every single day at noon, returning exactly 90 minutes later. Her evening phone calls, which used to happen in our living room while we watched TV together, had moved to the balcony or her home office with the door closed. The notification settings on her phone had changed too. No more preview messages on the lock screen. No more sounds for anything except actual phone calls. She'd enabled auto-delete on her messaging apps and started using a more complex passcode. These weren't the actions of someone with nothing to hide. That evening, I decided to test a theory. I was in my basement office working on a client project when I heard Lena's phone ring upstairs. Through the security system's intercom, I could hear her answer. "Hi, yes, I can talk for a few minutes." Her voice was different, softer, more intimate than the tone she used for actual work calls. I heard the sliding door to our balcony open and close. She was taking the call outside, away from me. Quietly, I made my way upstairs and positioned myself near the kitchen window that looked out onto the balcony. Lena was leaning against the railing, phone pressed to her ear, laughing at something the caller was saying. But here's the thing about acoustic analysis. I've trained myself to recognize the difference between sounds transmitted through a phone speaker and sounds occurring in the same physical space. And what I was hearing through the cracked balcony door wasn't just Lena's side of a phone conversation. I was hearing a man's voice, too close to be coming through a phone speaker. My blood went cold as the realization hit me. She wasn't on a phone call, someone was out there with her. I moved quickly to the front window, peering through the blinds at our driveway. Lena's car was there, as expected, but parked across the street was a sleek black BMW I didn't recognize. The balcony conversation continued for another 10 minutes before I heard the sliding door open again. By the time Lena came back inside, I was in the living room, pretending to watch the news. "Work call?" I asked casually. "Client check-in," she replied, not meeting my eyes. "You know how demanding they can be." I nodded, filing away another data point in the growing case against my wife's honesty. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to start recording. My home office is equipped with professional-grade audio recording equipment, the kind I use for client work involving voice analysis and signal processing. If Lena was going to continue her mysterious balcony conversations, I was going to document them. The opportunity came sooner than expected. That very evening, around 9 p.m., her phone rang again. Same soft tone, same intimate voice, same migration to the balcony. This time, I was ready. I activated my recording setup and positioned a directional microphone near the kitchen window. The audio quality was excellent, clear enough for the spectral analysis I planned to run later. "I missed you today," I heard Lena say, her voice carrying easily through the night air. A man's voice responded, close enough that I could make out his words. "I missed you too. The snaking around is getting harder." "I know, but Evan's been suspicious lately. We need to be more careful." My hands clenched into fists as I listened to my wife discuss her deception with another man. "Maybe it's time to tell him," the man said. "Not yet. I need to figure out the right way to handle this. He's not going to take it well." "Sebastian here is getting tired of hiding, Lena. This situation isn't fair to any of us." Sebastian. So my suspicions had been correct. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, filled with intimate details about their relationship and careful planning about when they could next meet, without arousing my suspicion. By the time they finished, I had more than enough evidence to confirm what I'd already known in my gut. My wife was having an affair, but I wasn't ready to confront her yet. I needed more than just audio recordings. I needed a complete picture of what I was dealing with. The next day, I called Frankie. "I need your help with something," I said without preamble when he answered. "Good morning to you too. What's going on?" "I need to install tracking software on Lena's devices." There was a long pause. "Evan, that's a dangerous road to go down. Are you sure you want to?" "I'm sure. I have audio proof she's cheating. Now I need location data and communication records." Another pause. "Okay, but we do this smart and legal. No hacking into accounts, no illegal surveillance. We stick to devices you legally have access to." "The tablet," I said immediately. "We share a tablet for household stuff. She carries it to work sometimes." "Perfect. That's legally defensible. I'll set up a tracking app that monitors location and backs up any photos or documents that sync to it." We met that afternoon at his office, where Frankie walked me through the software installation. The tracking app was sophisticated but invisible, running in the background while creating detailed logs of the tablet's location and backing up any synced content to a secure server. "This will show you everywhere the tablet goes," Frankie explained. "And if she has automatic photo backup enabled, which most people do, you'll see everything that gets synced from her phone." "How long before we have useful data?" "Give it a week, maybe less if she's as careless as most cheaters are." I didn't have to wait a week. 3 days later, I logged into the tracking system and found a treasure trove of evidence. The tablet had been to Sebastian's apartment 4 times in the past week, always during lunch hours or in the evenings when Lena claimed to be working late. But the real bombshell was in the photo backup folder. Dozens of images had synced from Lena's phone, photos she thought she'd deleted. Sebastian's hand on her waist at what looked like an upscale restaurant. Hotel selfies from a business trip she'd taken the previous month. A picture of them sharing dessert, her lipstick clearly visible on his cheek. The metadata told the full story. Timestamps, GPS coordinates, even the camera settings. She'd been documenting their affair without realizing it, and her automatic backup settings had preserved everything. I sat in my office, staring at the evidence on my screen, feeling a mixture of vindication and devastation. I'd been right, but being right felt like losing everything. My phone buzzed with a text from Lena. "Working late again tonight. Don't wait up." I checked the tracking app. The tablet was currently at Sebastian's apartment. That's when I decided it was time to gather intelligence on Sebastian himself. A few Google searches revealed that Sebastian Ford was indeed a consultant, but not the kind Lena had described. He specialized in corporate restructuring and had a reputation for coming into companies, identifying inefficiencies, and recommending personnel cuts. He wasn't working on the Morrison project at all. He was likely evaluating Lena's entire department. More interesting was his personal background. Divorced 6 months ago, with a pattern of relationships with married women. His LinkedIn profile showed him moving from company to company, never staying anywhere longer than 8 months. Sebastian Ford was a predator, and my wife was his latest target. But I wasn't going to be a passive victim in this situation. I had skills, resources, and now I had evidence. It was time to start planning my response. The first step was to document everything. I created encrypted files containing all the audio recordings, photos, location data, and timeline analysis. Everything was backed up to multiple secure servers and organized with the same methodical approach I used for client work. The second step was to understand the legal landscape. I spent hours researching divorce law, evidence requirements, and corporate ethics policies. I wanted to be prepared for every possible scenario. The third step was to start setting traps. I began with something simple. Our home security system included cameras that recorded audio, and I adjusted the settings to capture conversations throughout the house. If Lena was going to continue her phone calls, I wanted every word documented. I also started paying closer attention to her work schedule and expense reports. As her husband, I had access to our joint credit card statements, and I began cross-referencing her charges with her claimed work activities. What I found was a pattern of deception that went beyond just the affair. Romantic dinners charged as client development, hotel stays during Sebastian's business trips to the same cities, even flowers and gifts purchased with our shared credit card. Lena wasn't just cheating on me emotionally and physically, she was using our money to fund her affair. That discovery changed something fundamental in my approach. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. This was about financial fraud, professional misconduct, and a level of disrespect that demanded a proportional response. I started planning something that would hit her where it would hurt most: her career, her reputation, and her financial security. But first, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with at her workplace. Getting information about Lena's work situation required a more delicate approach. I couldn't just call her office and start asking questions without raising suspicions, but I had an advantage. I'd met several of her colleagues at company social events over the years. Tina Morrison worked in the administrative department and had always been friendly to me at office parties. She was also someone who seemed to notice everything that happened in the building. If anyone would have insights about Lena and Sebastian's relationship, it would be Tina. I crafted a casual text message. "Hi Tina, hope you're well. Lena mentioned there's been some reorganization in her department lately. As her husband, I'm trying to understand if I should be worried about her job security. Would you be free for coffee sometime this week?" Her response came within an hour. "Hi Evan, I'd be happy to chat. How about tomorrow at 2 p.m. at the Starbucks near the office?" The next afternoon, I sat across from Tina as she stirred her latte and chose her words carefully. "I want to be honest with you, Evan, because I like you and I think you deserve to know what's going on." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Sebastian Ford isn't working on any project with Lena. He's a consultant brought in to evaluate potential departmental restructuring, which could mean layoffs. But instead of doing his job, he's been spending all his time pursuing personal relationships with female employees. "Personal relationships?" Tina lowered her voice. "Everyone in the office knows about him and Lena. They're not exactly subtle. Long lunches, staying late together, the way they look at each other in meetings. It's become office gossip." I felt my face flush with embarrassment and anger. "How long has this been going on?" "About 6 weeks, maybe longer. The thing is, Evan, what they're doing violates company policy. Employees are required to disclose romantic relationships, especially when one person might have influence over another's job security. The fact that they haven't reported it could get them both fired." This was exactly the information I needed. What would it take to trigger an investigation? Tina looked uncomfortable. "Officially? A formal complaint with evidence would force HR to act. But Evan, are you sure you want to go down that road? Once you file a complaint, there's no taking it back." "What kind of evidence would be required?" "Documentation of the relationship, proof that it's affecting their work performance, evidence of policy violations. The company takes this stuff seriously because of liability issues. I thanked Tina for her honesty and left the meeting with a clear plan forming in my mind. That evening, I waited until Lena left for another late work session before accessing her home office computer. She'd left her email client logged in, and I quickly scanned through her recent messages. What I found exceeded my worst expectations. Email threads with Sebastian discussing not just their personal relationship, but strategies for hiding it from both me and their colleagues. Messages about expense report coding to disguise their dinner dates as business meetings. Even discussions about Sebastian potentially getting Lena promoted to a position that would require more travel, giving them more opportunities to be together. I screenshot everything, saved the files to encrypted storage, and began preparing my documentation. The next phase of my plan required perfect timing. I spent the weekend creating a comprehensive report that detailed every piece of evidence I'd gathered. Audio recordings with timestamps and spectral analysis proving the balcony conversations weren't phone calls. GPS tracking data showing the tablet's location at Sebastian's apartment during claimed work hours. Photos recovered from automatic backups. Email screenshots showing policy violations and expense fraud. It was a masterpiece of documentation, the kind of thorough analysis that had built my reputation in the data industry. On Monday morning, I called Lena's company and requested a meeting with the HR director. "I'd like to file a formal complaint regarding policy violations in my wife's department," I told the receptionist. "What type of policy violations?" "Undisclosed romantic relationships, expense fraud, and conflicts of interest involving a consultant and a permanent employee." There was a pause. "Please hold while I connect you to Director Harrison." Within minutes, I was scheduled for a meeting that afternoon. Director Harrison was a stern woman in her 50s who listened intently as I presented my evidence. She asked detailed questions about how I'd obtained the information, and I was careful to emphasize that everything came from shared devices, joint accounts, or publicly observable behavior. "This is quite thorough, Mr. Harper," she said finally. "I have to ask, what outcome are you hoping for?" "I want the company policy enforced. If employees are required to disclose relationships, then employees who violate that policy should face the stated consequences." She nodded. "I'll need to review this with our legal team, but based on what you've shown me, we'll likely need to conduct a formal investigation. That would mean interviewing both employees and potentially suspending them pending the outcome." "I understand." "Mr. Harper, I have to warn you that this will likely end your marriage." "Director Harrison, my marriage ended the moment my wife decided to lie to me and use our shared resources to fund an affair. I'm just making sure there are appropriate consequences for her choices." She scheduled the investigation to begin Wednesday morning. I went home that evening and waited for Lena to return from her latest work session. When she walked through the door at nearly 10 p.m., I was sitting in the living room with a glass of wine and a printed copy of our joint credit card statement. "We need to talk," I said calmly. She froze in the doorway. "About what?" "About Sebastian. About your lunch meetings. About the hotel charges on our credit card that correspond to his business trips. About the fact that you've been lying to me for months." The color drained from her face. "Evan, I can explain?" "No need. I have all the explanation I need." I held up the credit card statement. Romantic dinners with your affair partner charged as business expenses. Hotel stays in cities where he was working, even flowers and gifts purchased with our money. She sat down heavily in the chair across from me. "How did you?" "I'm a data analyst, Lena. I notice patterns. And you've been creating a very clear pattern of deception and financial fraud. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You're having an affair with Sebastian Ford, you've been using our joint resources to fund it, and you've been lying to me about it for months." She started crying, but I felt no sympathy. "The question now," I continued, "is what we do about it. We can work through this, Evan. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything." "Actually, Lena, it's too late for that. You see, I filed a complaint with your HR department this afternoon. They'll be conducting a formal investigation starting Wednesday morning." Her tears stopped abruptly. "You did what?" "Your relationship with Sebastian violates company policy. The expense fraud violates both company policy and potentially state law. I simply provided evidence of policy violations to the appropriate authorities." She stared at me in shock. "You could destroy my career." "No, Lena, you destroyed your career. I just documented it." The next morning, she tried a different approach. "Evan, please, call them and withdraw the complaint. I'll end things with Sebastian. I'll pay back any money I spent. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this." I looked at her across the breakfast table, this woman I'd loved and trusted for 8 years, and felt nothing but contempt. "It's too late for that. The investigation is already underway." You bastard. You planned this whole thing. I responded to your choices, Lena. You chose to have an affair. You chose to lie about it. You chose to use our money to fund it. I simply chose to document your choices and report policy violations to your employer. She left for work that morning without another word. At 10 a.m., my phone rang. It was Frankie. Dude, you need to see the news. What news? Check the local business journal website. Your wife and her boyfriend just got escorted out of their office building by security. I pulled up the website and found a brief article about 2 employees being suspended pending an investigation into policy violations at Lena's company. No names were mentioned, but the timing was unmistakable. My plan had worked perfectly, but I wasn't done yet. The investigation moved faster than I'd expected. By Thursday afternoon, both Lena and Sebastian had been formally suspended without pay pending the outcome of the HR review. The evidence I'd provided was so comprehensive that the company's legal team recommended immediate action to protect themselves from liability. Lena came home that evening looking defeated. They suspended both of us, she said, slumping into a chair at our kitchen table. I heard. Sebastian thinks you somehow set this up. Sebastian would be correct. She looked at me with a mixture of anger and disbelief. How can you be so cold about this? How can you be surprised? You lied to me for months, used our money to fund an affair, and violated your professional ethics. Did you think there wouldn't be consequences? I never meant for it to happen. Sebastian was persistent, charming. He made me feel appreciated in ways you hadn't in years. So this is my fault? That's not what I'm saying. It sounds exactly like what you're saying. You're trying to blame me for your decision to cheat. She was quiet for a long moment. What happens now? I pulled an envelope from the counter and set it in front of her. Divorce papers. I filed this morning. Her hands shook as she opened the envelope and scanned the documents. You want everything, she said finally. I want what I'm entitled to under state law, minus compensation for the marital funds you used to finance your affair. Evan, please. We can work through this. I made a mistake, but we have 8 years together. That has to count for something. It did count for something. It counted until you decided Sebastian was more important than our marriage. My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it and smiled. What? Lena asked. Sebastian's trying to reach me. He wants to meet and discuss the situation like men. You're not going to meet with him, are you? Actually, I think I will. It might be entertaining. The next evening, I met Sebastian at a bar downtown. He was already there when I arrived, nursing a whiskey and looking like he hadn't slept in days. Evan, he said as I sat down across from him. Sebastian. Look, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but what you've done to our careers is extreme. I signaled the bartender for a beer. What I've done? I reported policy violations to the appropriate authorities. You and Lena created the violations. You destroyed our lives over a relationship that wasn't even that serious. Interesting. That's not how it sounded in the recordings I have of your conversations. His face went pale. What recordings? The ones where you discussed how much you missed each other, how tired you were of sneaking around, how you wanted Lena to leave me. Those recordings? You recorded our private conversations? I recorded conversations that took place on my property, involving my wife, during which you both discussed defrauding me and violating your employment agreements, all perfectly legal. Sebastian downed the rest of his whiskey. What do you want from me? Nothing. You've already given me everything I needed. Then why did you agree to meet? I smiled. Because I wanted to see what kind of man seduces another man's wife and then acts surprised when there are consequences. He leaned forward aggressively. You think you're so smart, don't you? Well, here's something for your data analysis. Lena came to me. She was unhappy in your marriage long before I showed up. Maybe instead of playing detective, you should have been a better husband. Maybe. But you know what the difference is between us, Sebastian? What? When my marriage had problems, I didn't solve them by lying, cheating, and stealing. You did, and now you're facing the consequences of those choices. I finished my beer and stood up. Enjoy unemployment, Sebastian. I hear the job market for disgraced consultants is pretty competitive these days. As I walked away, I heard him call after me. This isn't over, Evan. I turned back. Actually, it is. You see, part of your suspension agreement includes a non-contact clause. If you approach me or my property again, it becomes a legal matter. And Sebastian, I'm very good at documentation. The weekend brought more developments. Lena's friend Priya called the house, demanding to speak with me. Evan, what you've done to Lena is cruel and vindictive, she said without preamble. Hello, Priya. I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. Don't be sarcastic. Lena is devastated. She made a mistake, but she doesn't deserve to have her entire career destroyed. Her career wasn't destroyed by me. It was destroyed by her decision to violate company policy and commit expense fraud. You could have handled this privately. You didn't have to involve her employer. Actually, I did. The expense fraud involved my money, which made it my business. The policy violations created liability for the company, which made it their business. Lena's the one who chose to make her personal decisions everyone else's problem. She's talking about taking legal action against you. For what? Reporting crimes and policy violations? Good luck with that. For invasion of privacy, for recording private conversations. Priya, I'm going to give you some free advice. Before Lena considers legal action, she should consult with an attorney about her exposure for expense fraud, perjury on employment documents, and breach of fiduciary duty. Because while she's been focused on her affair, I've been building a case that could result in criminal charges. There was a long silence. You're bluffing. Am I? Would you like to see the documentation? I have receipts, timestamps, GPS data, and recorded conversations. I have evidence of systematic deception spanning months, and I have it all organized in a format that would be very easy for prosecutors to understand. Another silence. What do you want? I want Lena to sign the divorce agreement without contest. I want her to accept responsibility for her choices. And I want everyone to stop pretending that I'm the villain in a situation where I was the victim. And if she does that, then we handle this as a civil matter and everyone moves on with their lives. And if she doesn't, then I provide all of my evidence to the district attorney's office and let them decide whether criminal charges are appropriate. Priya hung up without another word. On Monday morning, Lena's attorney called to schedule a meeting. The meeting with Lena's attorney took place in a sterile conference room downtown. Lena sat beside her lawyer, a middle-aged woman named Patricia Wells, who had a reputation for handling high-conflict divorces. Mr. Harper, Wells began, my client is prepared to discuss settlement terms, but your current proposal is unreasonable. Which parts do you find unreasonable? You're asking for the house, the majority of the joint assets, and spousal support from her. Given that this is a no-fault divorce state, you're not entitled to punitive damages for adultery. I opened my briefcase and removed a thick folder. Actually, Ms. Wells, I think you may be misunderstanding the legal situation. I handed her copies of all my documentation. The expense reports showing fraudulent charges, the GPS tracking data, the recovered photos, the recorded conversations, and a detailed analysis of the financial impact. This isn't just about adultery, I continued. This is about systematic fraud using marital assets, perjury on employment documents, and breach of fiduciary duty. In this state, those are criminal matters. Wells spent 20 minutes reviewing the documents while Lena sat in silence. This is quite comprehensive, Wells said finally. I'm very thorough. Mr. Harper, what outcome are you seeking? I want Lena to accept full responsibility for the dissipation of marital assets. I want her to agree to a property division that reflects the financial harm she's caused, and I want her to understand that any attempt to contest this agreement will result in me providing all of this evidence to law enforcement. Lena spoke for the first time. Evan, please, I know I made mistakes, but this will ruin my entire life. Your life was ruined by your own choices, Lena. I'm just making sure there are appropriate consequences. I'll lose everything. You should have thought about that before you decided Sebastian was more important than our marriage. Wells leaned forward. Mr. Harper, my client is willing to accept a modified version of your proposal, but we need some concessions. Such as? She keeps her retirement account and her car. You get the house and the majority of the other assets. No spousal support in either direction. I considered this. And she signs a statement acknowledging that the marriage ended due to her adultery and financial misconduct. That's non-negotiable. If she wants to avoid criminal charges, she needs to accept responsibility in writing. Lena looked at her attorney, who nodded reluctantly. Fine, Lena said quietly. There's one more thing, I added. Sebastian. What about him? I want a written statement detailing his role in the expense fraud and policy violations. If he tries to find another consulting position, his potential employers should know what kind of person they're considering. Evan, that's vindictive. It's accurate. Sebastian participated in defrauding me and violating corporate policies. Future employers deserve to know that information. He'll never agree to that. Then he can explain his employment gap and the circumstances of his suspension to future employers himself. Either way, his professional reputation will reflect his personal choices. The meeting ended with Lena agreeing to all of my terms. She would sign the divorce agreement, accept responsibility for her actions, and provide the statement about Sebastian's conduct. As we prepared to leave, she made one final attempt. "Evan, I know you hate me right now, but we had some good years together. Doesn't that count for anything?" I looked at her, this woman who had shared my bed, my home, my dreams for the future, and felt nothing but contempt. Those good years were built on trust, Lena. When you decided to betray that trust, you retroactively destroyed everything we'd built together. The woman I loved never existed. She was just a character you played until you found someone more interesting. 2 weeks later, the divorce was finalized. Lena moved out of our house and into a small apartment across town. The company investigation concluded with both her and Sebastian being terminated for cause, which meant no severance pay and no positive references. Sebastian left town shortly after, his consulting business destroyed by the scandal and his professional reputation in ruins, but I wasn't quite finished. I'd kept copies of all the evidence, organized in a comprehensive database that told the complete story of their deception, and I'd created a website, professionally designed and search engine optimized, that detailed the entire affair with full documentation. The site was titled The Cost of Deception, a case study in professional and personal ethics. It presented the story as an educational resource about the consequences of workplace affairs and financial fraud, with Lena and Sebastian's names prominently featured throughout. Within a month, the site was ranking highly in search results for both of their names. Any potential employer, dating prospect, or business partner who Googled them would find a detailed account of their misconduct, complete with evidence and documentation. Lena called me when she discovered the website. "Evan, you have to take that site down. I can't get a job with that showing up in search results. The site contains only factual information supported by evidence. If it's damaging to your reputation, that's because your actions were damaging to your reputation. Please, I've learned my lesson. I've paid the price." "Have you?" "You lost a job you were going to lose anyway when Sebastian's restructuring recommendations were implemented. You lost a marriage you'd already decided wasn't important to you. You lost assets you'd already stolen from. What exactly have you sacrificed that you valued?" "My future, my ability to rebuild my life." "Your future was always going to be built on the consequences of your past choices, Lena. I just made sure those consequences were properly documented." She hung up, and I never heard from her again. 6 months later, I received a message through LinkedIn from a woman named Jennifer, who worked in HR at a company in another state. "Mr. Harper, I found your website about Lena Ford and Sebastian Ford. We were considering Ms. Ford for a position, and your documentation was very helpful in our decision-making process. Thank you for providing such thorough information about their professional conduct." I smiled as I read the message. The system was working exactly as designed. A year later, I was having drinks with Frankie at our usual spot when he brought up the subject. "Do you ever feel bad about what you did to them?" I considered the question. Do you feel bad when a virus scanner detects and removes malware from your computer? That's not the same thing. Isn't it? Lena and Sebastian were malware in my life. They were designed to extract resources while providing nothing of value in return. I detected them, documented their behavior, and removed them from my system. The fact that they can't infect other systems as easily now is just good cybersecurity. That's a pretty cold way to look at relationships. It's an accurate way to look at predators. Frankie raised his glass. Well, here's to comprehensive documentation and appropriate consequences. I'll drink to that. As we clinked glasses, I reflected on the past year. I'd lost a wife, but I'd gained something more valuable. The knowledge that I was capable of protecting myself and holding people accountable for their actions. The house was quieter now, but it was honest. The smart home technology still monitored and protected, but now it was safeguarding something real rather than maintaining an illusion. And somewhere out there, Lena and Sebastian were living with the permanent consequences of their temporary pleasures, their names forever linked to a cautionary tale about the cost of deception. I'd turned my pain into their problem, my betrayal into their burden. The data didn't lie, the evidence didn't forgive, and justice, properly implemented, didn't forget.